I never thought I'd find myself in Japan, let alone hiding in a Buddhist temple from the vultures with cameras. But here I am, Jamie Sullivan, running away from my life in Charlotte and the mess I'd made of it. The divorce papers weren't even dry yet, and already the tabloids were having a field day with their sources close to the actress, claiming everything from drug abuse to secret affairs. The autumn air in Kyoto hits different, crisp and clean, nothing like the suffocating spotlight back home. I ditched my signature brunette locks for a temporary blonde disguise, though my green eyes still gave me away to anyone who looked too closely. My agent thinks I'm having a breakdown. Maybe I am. Sumimasen, I attempt awkwardly, trying to ask for directions to the temple entrance. The elderly Japanese woman just smiles politely and bows, leaving me standing there like an idiot with my designer suitcase and terrible pronunciation. That's when I hear it. English words floating through the air like a lifeline. Are you looking for Ryoan-ji Temple? I turn to find a striking Asian American woman with flowing black hair and kind brown eyes. There's something familiar about her, but I can't place it. She's holding a professional camera, and for a moment, my heart stops, not another photographer. I'm Nina, she says, seemingly reading my panic. I'm here for the meditation retreat. Not press, I promise. She raises her hands in surrender, and something in her gentle smile makes me believe her. I start, but she cuts me off with a knowing look. I know who you are. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. She gestures toward the temple entrance. Come on, I'll show you where to register. The monks don't speak much English, and trust me, you'll want someone who can translate the meditation instructions. Unless you fancy sitting in lotus position for 6 hours straight. I find myself following her, drawn to her easy confidence and the way she carries herself, like someone who's completely comfortable in her own skin. Something I haven't felt in years. The temple grounds are breathtaking, ancient stones and carefully manicured gardens creating a perfect sanctuary from the chaos I'd left behind. Nina helps me navigate the registration process, translating the strict rules and daily schedule. No phones, no cameras except for approved times, no speaking during meditation hours. It sounds like heaven. Why are you really here? Nina asks later, as we're being shown to our rooms, coincidentally adjacent to each other. Most people don't randomly decide to do a Buddhist retreat in Kyoto. I pause, considering my words carefully. I'm trying to find something I lost, or maybe something I never had. She nods, understanding flickering in her eyes. Aren't we all? Then with a slight smirk. Though most of us don't have to dodge paparazzi to do it. As I settle into my sparse room that evening, listening to the distant sound of temple bells, I realize something. For the first time in months, I'm not thinking about the divorce, the tabloids, or my imploding career. Instead, I'm thinking about the mysterious woman next door, and why her presence makes me feel both terrified and strangely at peace. The moon rises over the temple gardens, and I catch myself wondering if Nina is awake too, thinking about this strange twist of fate that brought us both here. I shake my head, trying to dismiss the thought. I came here to find peace, not to complicate my life further. But as I drift off to sleep, I can't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, this retreat might change my life in ways I never expected. The first week at Ryoan-ji Temple passed in a blur of meditation bells and silent meals. I kept catching Nina watching me during our shared meditation sessions, but not in the way I was used to being watched. There was something different in her gaze, like she was seeing past the glossy magazine covers to something real underneath. One evening during our allocated tea time, she finally brought up what I'd been dreading. I have a confession, Nina said, carefully pouring green tea into my cup. I'm actually one of your biggest fans. My stomach dropped, but before I could retreat behind my carefully constructed walls, she continued, But that's not why I helped you that first day. You just looked lost. I know that feeling. The way she said it made me pause. And how did you find your way? She smiled, her brown eyes reflecting the soft lantern light. Photography helped. Seeing the world through a lens makes you focus on what's really important. She hesitated. I actually have some of your photos in my portfolio. From premieres? I asked, though I couldn't recall ever seeing her at red carpet events. No, from your humanitarian work in Southeast Asia, 3 years ago? She pulled out her phone against temple rules, but the monks weren't around, and showed me a stunning black and white image. It was me, but not the polished actress version. I was laughing with local children, my hair a mess, no makeup, completely unguarded. How did I never see these? I whispered, swiping through more photos. Each one captured moments I barely remembered, but they felt more authentic than any professional shoot I'd ever done. They were for a small gallery exhibition. I never published them widely because... She paused. Well, you seemed so happy and free in those moments. It felt wrong to exploit that. Something shifted between us that night. Our silent meditation sessions became charged with unspoken understanding. We developed a routine, tea ceremonies at sunset, silent walks through the temple gardens, shared glances during meals that spoke volumes without words. One night, unable to sleep, I found Nina in the moonlit garden. She was photographing the way moonlight played on the surface of the koi pond. Couldn't sleep? She asked, not looking up from her camera. Too many thoughts, I admitted, settling beside her on the stone bench. The silence here, it makes everything louder in my head. That's the point, she said softly. We have to face our noise before we can find real quiet. Our shoulders touched, and neither of us moved away. The contact sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the autumn chill. Nina's camera lowered slowly, and I could feel her gaze on my profile. Jamie, she whispered, and something in her voice made my heart race. I should tell you something. But before she could finish, the temple bell rang, signaling midnight meditation. We jumped apart like guilty teenagers, and I fled back to my room, my skin still tingling where we'd touched. Later that night, lying in my Spartan bed, I realized two things. First, Nina had known exactly who I was from the moment we met, but had given me the gift of anonymity anyway. Second, and far more terrifying, I was developing feelings that went way beyond gratitude or friendship. The real question was, what was I going to do about it? My life was complicated enough without adding this new layer of confusion. But every time Nina looked at me with those understanding eyes, every time she caught the subtle references in my careful words, every time our hands brushed during tea ceremony, I felt myself falling deeper into something I hadn't even known I was looking for. Tomorrow would bring more meditation, more silence, more moments caught between fear and desire. But for now, I let myself dream about the way moonlight painted shadows across Nina's face, and how for the first time in years, I felt truly seen. I used to think I had everything figured out, I confessed to Nina one evening, as we sat hidden in a secluded corner of the temple gardens. The lantern festival was in full swing, paper lights swaying gently in the breeze, casting dancing shadows across her face. Let me guess. The perfect Hollywood script? Nina's voice held no judgment, just quiet understanding. Famous actress marries handsome actor, lives happily ever after? Something like that. I laughed bitterly. Turns out, living a script isn't the same as living a life. David, my ex, he wanted the image more than the reality. Every time I tried to be real with him, he'd remind me about our brand. Nina's hand found mine in the darkness, her thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. And what do you want, Jamie? Not the actress, not the brand, just you. The question hung between us, heavy with possibility. I stared at our intertwined fingers, marveling at how natural it felt. I want. The words caught in my throat. I want to stop pretending. Then don't, Nina whispered, and suddenly she was closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, illuminated by the lantern light. My heart hammered against my ribs as she reached up to brush a strand of hair from my face. I started but couldn't finish. Never what? Never felt this way about a woman? Never allowed myself to want something this real, this terrifying? I know, she said softly. Neither had I, until my first girlfriend in college. Sometimes life surprises you. The lantern light caught the curve of her smile, and something inside me broke free. I leaned forward, pressing my lips to hers before I could talk myself out of it. The kiss was gentle, questioning, like the first notes of a song we were both learning to play. When we pulled apart, Nina's eyes were wide with wonder. I've been wanting to do that since the first day, she admitted, making me laugh. Even when I was just a lost tourist with terrible Japanese? Especially then. You were finally real. The festival crowds moved around us, but in our hidden corner behind the cherry trees, we'd created our own world. Nina told me about her journey, coming out to her traditional family, finding her voice through photography, healing from her last relationship that ended badly. She couldn't handle being with someone who wasn't out, Nina explained. I understand that now, but at the time. Is that why you're here? I asked. To heal? She nodded. That, and to find beauty in stillness again. My work had started feeling empty, just chasing the next perfect shot. Then I saw you wandering around looking so beautifully lost, and suddenly everything was in focus again. I kissed her again, deeper this time, tasting green tea and possibility on her lips. The paper lantern swayed above us, casting patterns that looked like stars falling through the trees. What happens when we leave here? I asked, voicing the fear that had been growing alongside my feelings. My life is complicated. Nina's fingers traced the line of my jaw. Life is always complicated, but sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the chaos. She smiled. Besides, I'm pretty good at capturing beautiful moments without the world noticing. As if to prove her point, she pulled out her camera, switching it to silent mode. The soft click caught me mid-laugh, head thrown back against the cherry tree trunk, more relaxed than I'd felt in years. See? She showed me the display. That's the real Jamie Sullivan. Looking at the photo, I barely recognized myself. The woman in the image was raw, unguarded, glowing with something that looked suspiciously like happiness. You make me feel brave, I whispered. You already were brave, Nina corrected. You just needed someone to remind you. The temple bell rang in the distance, signaling the end of the festival. We reluctantly separated, but something had fundamentally shifted. As we walked back to our rooms, our fingers brushed with deliberate intention, each touch a promise of more to come. That night, I lay awake for hours, my lips still tingling from our kisses, my mind racing with possibilities and fears. But for the first time since arriving at the temple, the chaos in my head didn't feel like something I needed to silence. Instead, it felt like the beginning of a story I finally wanted to tell. Morning meditation became torture, not because of the hard wooden floor or the endless silence, but because Nina sat just 2 cushions away, and every fiber of my being was aware of her presence. After our kisses at the Lantern Festival, I'd retreated into myself, overwhelmed by the intensity of my feelings and their implications. You're avoiding me, Nina said quietly one afternoon, cornering me in the temple library. I pretended to be absorbed in a book I couldn't read, its Japanese characters swimming before my eyes. I'm not, I lied, but my voice betrayed me. I just need time to think. About what? About how right it felt? Or about how it might affect your carefully constructed public image? There was an edge to her voice I hadn't heard before. Before I could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Nina, is that really you? We both turned to see a stunning Japanese woman standing in the doorway, her designer meditation clothes making my simple robe look shabby. Nina's face went pale. Keiko, she breathed. What are you doing here? I teach meditation workshops now, Keiko replied in perfect English, her eyes moving between Nina and me. The better question is, what are you doing here? Last I heard you were still in New York, crying over our breakup. I felt like an intruder in a private drama, but couldn't make myself leave. Nina's ex-girlfriend, the one who couldn't handle being with someone closeted. The irony wasn't lost on me. That was 2 years ago, Nina said stiffly. I'm fine now. Keiko's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. Clearly, moving on to bigger fish, her gaze lingered on me, recognition flickering in her eyes, though I doubt Miss Sullivan here is any more ready to be out than I was. The words hit like a physical blow. Nina stepped between us, her voice low and dangerous. That's enough, Keiko. But the damage was done. All my fears and doubts came rushing back, drowning out the memory of cherry trees and lantern light. I fled the library, ignoring Nina calling my name. The next 3 days were a special kind of hell. Our mandatory meditation retreat meant being trapped in close quarters, watching Keiko float around like some enlightened being while she led workshops. Worse was seeing her pull Nina aside for catching-up sessions, their heads close together in intimate conversation. It's not what you think, Nina finally cornered me in the garden. Keiko and I are history. Are you sure about that? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. She seems pretty interested in rekindling things. She's interested in drama, as always. Nina ran a frustrated hand through her hair. Look, what happened with Keiko taught me a lot about what I don't want. I don't want someone who makes demands about how I should live my life or when I should come out. But she wasn't wrong, was she? I whispered. I'm not ready for any of this. My career, my fans, my whole life. Stop. Nina grabbed my hands, forcing me to look at her. I'm not asking you to hold a press conference. I'm just asking you to be honest with yourself. About what you feel, about what you want. The meditation bell rang, calling us to an extended evening session. We were seated across from each other this time, and as the monk guided us through breathing exercises, I couldn't help but open my eyes to look at her. Nina sat perfectly still, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She must have felt my gaze because her eyes fluttered open, meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. In that moment, surrounded by silence and incense smoke, everything became crystal clear. I wanted her. I wanted this. The rest, the media, my career, the endless complications could wait. After meditation, I found a note slipped under my door. Meet me at the koi pond at midnight, please. Standing there under the stars, watching Nina approach through the mist, I realized something. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when you're scared but show up anyway. I'm terrified, I confessed when she reached me, of feeling this way, of what it means, of losing everything I've built. Nina took my hand, interlacing our fingers. Being scared doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the koi swim lazy circles in the moonlight, our fingers still intertwined. Sometimes the loudest truths are spoken in perfect quiet. The first photo appeared on TMZ at dawn, me entering the temple grounds, Nina close behind. By lunch, social media was ablaze with speculation about my mysterious Asian companion. By dinner, someone had identified Nina and dug up her entire photography portfolio, including those intimate shots from Southeast Asia. I'm so sorry, Nina said, showing me her phone where notifications were exploding. Someone must have recognized you at the festival. I was pacing our favorite spot in the garden, my temporary blonde hair coming loose from its messy bun. It's not your fault. I should have known better than to think I could hide forever. My agent's texts were becoming increasingly frantic. Damage control needed as soon as possible. Who is she? Please tell me you're not. I turned off my phone, unable to deal with the implied judgment in those unfinished sentences. Then Nina's gallery posted the entire collection of her photos of me. Not just the Southeast Asia series, but new ones from the temple, me in meditation, laughing during tea ceremony, walking in the gardens. They were stunning, intimate without being invasive, capturing moments of pure, unguarded joy. They're going viral, Nina said softly. People are calling them the real Jamie Sullivan series. I should have been angry about the invasion of privacy, but looking at the photos, all I felt was seen. Really seen, maybe for the first time in my career. When did you take these? Every day since you got here. She looked embarrassed. I couldn't help myself. You're most beautiful when you don't know anyone's watching. Thunder rumbled in the distance, matching the storm brewing in my chest. The first drops of rain began to fall as my phone lit up with a text from my publicist. Pictures surfacing of you and photographer in compromising positions. Needs statement now. Nina read the text over my shoulder and stepped back. I should go. Give you space to handle this? No. I grabbed her wrist, surprising us both with the force of my movement. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of hiding. The rain was falling harder now, soaking through our thin robes. Lightning flashed, illuminating Nina's face. Worried, hopeful, beautiful. I pulled her closer, not caring who might see. Jamie, she whispered, are you sure? Instead of answering, I kissed her. Rain poured down around us, thunder crashed overhead, and somewhere in the distance, cameras probably clicked, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Nina's hands tangled in my wet hair, pulling me closer as years of careful restraint crumbled. We stumbled back to my room, leaving a trail of wet footprints across ancient wooden floors. That night, in the midst of the storm, we created our own sanctuary of whispered confessions and gentle discoveries. Nina's camera lay forgotten in the corner as she mapped my body with artist's hands, teaching me a new language of touch and trust. Morning found us tangled in sheets. The storm passed, but its energy still crackling between us. My phone had exploded overnight with messages. My agent quit, 2 movie offers were withdrawn, and hashtag Jamie Sullivan girlfriend was trending worldwide. Any regrets? Nina asked, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. I showed her my phone screen, a tweet I just posted. Love isn't a scandal. Thank you Ninakan photo for helping me see myself clearly. Your lens captured my truth. Her eyes widened. Jamie, you didn't have to. I wanted to. I kissed her softly. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing my own story. Within hours, the photos from Nina's gallery had been shared millions of times, accompanied by messages of support and love. Yes, there were haters and trolls, but they were drowned out by fans calling the images breathtaking and revolutionary. One particular photo went viral, the one from the Lantern Festival, me laughing against the cherry tree. "This is what authentic happiness looks like," read the most shared comment. Who are we to judge? As we lay there, listening to the temple bells ring for morning meditation, I realized something profound. Sometimes the biggest scandals aren't scandals at all. They're just moments of truth breaking through carefully constructed facades. "What happens now?" Nina asked, her head resting on my chest. "Now?" I smiled, running my fingers through her hair. "Now we write our own story. Miss Sullivan, your management team strongly advises against attending tonight's gallery opening." My new publicist's voice crackled through the phone. "The media circus will be unprecedented." I caught Nina's eye across our Charlotte apartment as she adjusted her camera equipment. 6 weeks had passed since the temple, since our story broke, since everything changed. "I'll be there," I said firmly, ending the call. The gallery was Nina's dream, a solo exhibition titled Sacred Silence, featuring her temple photographs alongside other intimate portraits of people finding themselves in quiet moments. My photos were just a small part of the collection, but they'd become the talk of the art world. "You don't have to do this," Nina said softly, watching me apply makeup in the bathroom mirror. "We could have a private viewing later." I turned to face her, taking in her elegant black dress and nervous energy. "This is your night. I'm not hiding anymore." The gallery was packed, a mix of art critics, celebrities, and media. Flashbulbs exploded as we walked in together, my hand firmly clasped in Nina's. The photos lined the walls, monks in meditation, local Japanese families at the temple, everyday people finding extraordinary moments of peace. And then there was our story, told through Nina's lens. "These are remarkable," a prominent art critic said, studying a black and white image of me during morning meditation. "The vulnerability, the transformation. You can see the moment she stops being an actress and becomes simply human." Nina squeezed my hand. "That's because she finally allowed herself to be seen." The centerpiece of the exhibition was a large photo taken the morning after the storm. I was wrapped in temple robes, face free of makeup, looking out over the koi pond. The sunrise painted everything in gold, and there was a peace in my expression I'd never seen before. "Is it true?" a young reporter asked, notebook in hand. "Did you really find love in a Buddhist temple?" I looked at Nina, who was chatting with gallery owners across the room. "I found myself," I answered. "Love was an unexpected bonus." The crowd grew throughout the evening. I overheard snippets of conversation: bold career move, publicity stunt, career suicide. But for every cynical comment, there were dozens of genuine reactions to the art, to the story it told. A young woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Your courage helped me come out to my parents." By midnight, most of the guests had left, and Nina was doing final interviews with art magazines. I wandered the gallery alone, reliving our journey through her photographs. The last image in the series was new, one I hadn't seen before. It showed us in the temple garden, foreheads touching, completely lost in each other. The caption read simply, "Love in Sacred Spaces." "That's my favorite," Nina said, appearing beside me. "Because it's the moment you stopped being afraid." I turned to her, aware of the remaining photographers watching us. "I'm still afraid sometimes," I admitted, "but being afraid with you feels braver than being safe without you." She smiled, that same gentle smile that had first drawn me in at the temple entrance. "Ready to really shock them?" Before I could ask what she meant, Nina dropped to one knee, pulling out a small box. The remaining crowd gasped collectively. My heart stopped. "Jamie Sullivan," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, "you took a chance on love in a temple halfway around the world. Will you take another chance and marry me?" The ring was simple, a band of rose gold with a small diamond. Nothing flashy or Hollywood, just pure and true, like us. "Yes," I whispered, then louder for everyone to hear, "Yes." The remaining photographers went crazy, but I barely noticed. Nina slipped the ring on my finger, and as we kissed, I heard the soft click of a camera shutter. Her camera, set on timer, capturing one more perfect moment in our unconventional love story. Later, as we lay in bed, Nina showed me the photo. For the next exhibition, she teased, I think I'll call it Sacred Love. I looked at the ring, glinting in the darkness. Tell me we're not crazy. Oh, we're definitely crazy, she laughed. But sometimes crazy is exactly right. The script landed on our kitchen table with a dull thud. Leading role in a major studio film, my agent had said. A career comeback. Then came the catch. They just need you to keep your personal life private during filming. Nina looked up from her laptop where she'd been editing photos for her next exhibition. They want you back in the closet. Just temporarily, I mimicked my agent's placating tone. For marketing purposes. The offer was tempting, a complex character, Oscar-worthy material, 8-figure salary, everything I'd worked for my entire career. But as I watched Nina working, completely absorbed in her art, I realized something. Success meant nothing if I couldn't share it with her. I called my agent back. Tell them no. Jamie, be reasonable, he pleaded. This could resurrect your career. My career isn't dead, I replied. It's just changing direction. And it was true. While major studios were hesitant to touch the controversial actress, independent filmmakers were reaching out. LGBT production companies wanted me for leading roles. Documentary makers were interested in our story. Nina supported me through every rejection, every disappointed phone call, every tabloid headline questioning my career suicide. She held me when I cried after losing a role I'd been perfect for, kissed away my doubts when old industry friends stopped calling. You're producing something more valuable than movies, she said one night as we cuddled on our balcony. You're producing hope. She was right. My social media was flooded with messages from fans sharing their coming-out stories, thanking me for showing them that love was worth any sacrifice. Nina's photography career was soaring. Her raw, honest portrayal of our journey had struck a chord in the art world. Then came the opportunity I hadn't expected. A young filmmaker approached me about producing and starring in a series about LGBT artists finding their voice. The script was brilliant, honest, and unapologetically queer. It's not a blockbuster budget, I warned Nina as we reviewed the contract. She laughed, pulling me closer on our couch. Since when do you care about that? That night, as storm clouds gathered over Charlotte, we celebrated my new project in our own intimate way. Nina's camera lay forgotten on the bedside table as we lost ourselves in each other, our bodies speaking a language we'd perfected over months of learning each other's rhythms. I'm proud of you, Nina whispered afterward, tracing the outline of my face in the darkness. You're changing the narrative. Lightning illuminated our bedroom, reminding me of that first stormy night at the temple. Remember when I was terrified of being seen? Now look at you, she smiled, a proud producer of queer content. The production meetings started the next week. Young, talented LGBT actors who'd been relegated to minor roles finally had a chance to shine. Writers who'd been told their stories were too niche found a platform. And through it all, Nina documented everything with her characteristic sensitivity and grace. This isn't just a show, one young actress told me during rehearsals. This is a revolution. Maybe she was right. Maybe sometimes the biggest acts of rebellion are simply living your truth openly, unapologetically. Each morning, I woke up next to Nina, watched her photograph the sunrise from our balcony, and knew I'd made the right choice. Any regrets? Nina asked one evening, reviewing the day's production photos. I showed her the latest viewing projections for our show, higher than anyone had expected, only that I didn't do this sooner. The industry was changing, slowly but surely. Our love story, captured through Nina's lens and shared with the world, had become part of a larger conversation about authenticity and entertainment. Later that night, as we lay tangled in sheets, Nina's camera caught one more intimate moment, me laughing, completely uninhibited, as she told terrible photography puns. The resulting image would later become part of her next exhibition, titled Love Without Filters. You know what's funny? I mused, watching her set up the perfect shot. I spent years learning how to act, and all it took to finally be real was falling in love with a photographer. Nina lowered her camera, her eyes soft with emotion. Sometimes the best stories are the ones we never saw coming. Outside, Charlotte's lights twinkled like stars, and I realized that losing a movie role meant nothing compared to gaining a life lived in truth. In Nina's arms, I wasn't an actress or a controversy. I was simply, perfectly, myself. 1 year to the day after our first meeting, Nina and I stood at the entrance of Ryuan-ji Temple. this time not as strangers, but as partners returning home. My latest LGBT series had just wrapped its successful first season, and Nina's photography had earned her international acclaim. We'd chosen this moment, this place, to make our commitment official. "Remember when you couldn't even ask for directions?" Nina teased, now fluent in Japanese herself after numerous visits. The temple grounds hadn't changed. The same ancient stones, the same carefully tended gardens, the same sense of timeless peace. This time, though, we weren't hiding. A small group of chosen friends and family waited inside, including Nina's parents who'd finally embraced our relationship after seeing their daughter's happiness captured so beautifully through her own lens. Miss Sullivan, the head monk, greeted us in careful English, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Miss Chen, welcome back to where your story began." The ceremony wasn't traditional. How could it be? We'd created something entirely our own, blending Buddhist principles with our personal journey. Nina wore a modern take on a traditional kimono, while I chose a simple white dress that would have made my former stylists cringe. As we knelt before the altar, I couldn't help but glance at the meditation hall where we'd first stolen glances at each other, the garden where we'd shared our first kiss, the koi pond where we'd finally stopped running from our truth. In Buddhist teaching, the monk began, "Love is not possession but liberation. It is finding yourself in the act of letting go." Nina reached for my hand, her photographer's calluses familiar against my palm. Her camera sat idle for once, but our friend Emma, a photojournalist we'd met through the LGBT series, captured every moment. "You found each other in silence," the monk continued, "and built your love in truth. Now speak your promises aloud." Nina went first, her voice steady and sure. "I promise to always see you, not the actress, not the icon, but you, Jamie Sullivan, in all your beautiful complexity. I promise to capture our moments together, not just with my camera, but with my heart." My turn came, and suddenly I was grateful for all those years of memorizing lines, because my heart was too full for improvisation. I promised to never hide again, from you, from myself, from our truth. I promise to face whatever comes next together, to keep choosing you every day, in every scene of our story. The monk smiled, producing two simple red threads. In Japanese tradition, the red string of fate connects those destined to meet. You two have proven that sometimes destiny requires courage to fulfill. As he tied our wrists together, I remembered all the moments that had led us here, the confused tourist and her helpful translator, the actress and her photographer, two women brave enough to choose love over expectation. After the ceremony, we held a small reception in the temple gardens. Nina's latest exhibition, Sacred Returns, was displayed along the stone paths. Our journey captured in black and white, from that first meeting to this perfect moment. "Look," Nina whispered, pointing to the koi pond as evening fell. Paper lanterns floated on the water, each one carrying a message from our guests. "Make a wish?" We leaned over the water, our joined hands casting shadows on the surface. "I don't need to," I replied. "I have everything I ever wished for right here." Later, as we prepared to leave, the head monk presented us with a gift, a photograph taken the day we first met, somehow captured by one of the temple's security cameras. In it, we were strangers, Nina helping a lost tourist find her way. "Every great journey begins with a single step," he said wisely, "or in your case, a single photograph." As we drove away from the temple, Nina's hand firmly in mine, I thought about that scared actress who'd come here running from her life. I thought about the brave photographer who'd taught her to stop running. I thought about all the people our story had touched, all the lives changed because we'd been courageous enough to love openly. "Ready for our next chapter?" Nina asked, her eyes bright with promises of adventures to come. I squeezed her hand, feeling the red thread still wrapped around our wrists. Some ties, I'd learned, were meant to last forever. With you, always. Behind us, Ryoanji Temple stood silent and eternal, keeper of countless stories of transformation. Ours was just one tale among many, but it was ours, authentic, imperfect, and perfectly real. And that, I finally understood, was the greatest love story of all.